I wrote my paper on deaf and hard of hearing students. I first discussed their history, then current educational practices, and I finish with ways that schools can be inclusive to these students. Deaf and hard of hearing individuals, both in society and in schools, have had a long and oppressive history. Deaf and hard of hearing students are part of a unique culture that is often overlooked by educators. This results in a failing education system for those individuals, as they are not provided the proper support in schools. Similar to the experiences of many minorities in America, the history of deaf people has been largely neglected. They resembled other groups who did not fit the mold for American society, such as new immigrants or others with disabilities, and many deaf and hard of hearing people were isolated from mainstream society. Inventions such as the telephone and radio marginalized deaf people. However, that only led to deaf people paving their own way. Educators established their own schools. Gallaudet and Clerk established the first school, the Connecticut Asylum for the Deaf and Dumb, now named the American School for the Deaf. In the following years, 15 more schools for deaf students were established. In response to deaf educators establishing their own schools, advocates of oralism began to speak out. Oralism was the notion that deaf people could be integrated into society by teaching them speech and lip reading. Oralists wanted to replace signed communication altogether with speech and lip reading. Alexander Graham Bell, credited for patenting the first telephone, was a very outspoken oralist who did not view signed communication as a valid language. This oralism versus sign language debate waged on for decades. The sign language perspective was bolstered by the scientific recognition of American Sign Language, or ASL, as a true language. Many laws were passed to help deaf and hard of hearing children access the education they deserved, including the Education of All Handicapped Children Act in 1975 and its amendments in 1986. Finally, in 1990, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, was enacted. This refers to the entire package of laws that assures a fair and equitable public education. When students come into the classroom fluent in ASL, there can be communication problems between the students and the teacher. There are several modern approaches to the education of deaf and hard of hearing students. The first is oralism. Though it was controversial in the past, it is a common approach sought out by hearing parents who have a deaf child. The child is fitted with hearing aids at a very young age, then taught spoken language with the help of an intervention specialist. Since the child first has to become accustomed to the hearing aids before they can learn language, they are often delayed in their language skills compared to same-aged peers. This means that teachers must find a balance between curriculum that is cognitively challenging, yet easy to understand. The next educational approach is total communication. This term has come to mean talking and signing at the same time. When it first started being used in schools, it seemed to be the best of both worlds. However, flaws were soon found. There was a mismatch between the signed and spoken messages. The signing was often incomplete or even contradictory to what was being said, and the spoken message wasn't delivered at a natural speech rate. Furthermore, teachers would avoid saying things they did not know how to sign, resulting in constraints on the curriculum. The final educational approach is bilingualism. Models of bilingual education for hearing students are similar to those of deaf children, but they must be adapted and modified to fit their particular needs. An effective bilingual education should have goals that reach beyond the purely academic. For instance, the development of a deaf identity should be a priority. Most importantly, though, is that sign language and English should be kept separate for teaching purposes. However, with bilingual education comes bicultural education. With this pedagogical method, there is a need for the curriculum to have a multicultural basis and to accommodate deaf studies as a subject, as well as include hearing culture. There are many ways schools can be inclusive to deaf and hard of hearing students. To start, it is important to remember that the visual line of communication is critical, as that is a deaf or hard of hearing person's primary means of communication. Therefore, a student must be sitting in a place with an unobstructed view. Also, Teachers can speak at a normal pace and check with the interpreter, if there is one, if they need to catch up. Teachers can also ensure there is adjustable lighting for visual displays so students can see properly. Finally, teachers can arrange the classroom or workstations in a way that the deaf or hard of hearing student can see when someone enters the room. Schools are always struggling to accommodate a myriad of special needs students, and deaf and hard of hearing students are no different. Oralism, total communication, and bilingualism are all valid approaches. However, each individual approach comes with its own unique set of flaws. There is no perfect method for teaching deaf and hard of hearing students. There is no perfect teacher nor perfect pedagogy. All one can do is try their best to accommodate each student to the best of his or her ability.